Okay, so here's my full review of the newest tablet from the regular iPad lineup. It is, of course, the iPad 9th generation. Let's go ahead and jump in. Now, this was a very quick turnaround time for me to come up with this review of the newest iPad here, and the reason is very simple. This is more of an update to the iPad 8th generation that I covered sometime last year here, and you'll see why. You see additional details in just a moment here, starting with the design of this tablet here. It's really nothing that we haven't seen before, right? So the same size and looks as that of the iPad 8, meaning you have that 10.2 inches display size, and just like the previous model, it is an IPS display, tagged as an IPS Retina display as Apple likes to call them, but it's exactly the same display as the previous one. So that same non-laminated display there, that same level of brightness at up to 500 nits, same resolution at 2160 by 1620, I believe. Although this time around, we have a new option. They added a new feature, which is the True Tone display. And that is actually a feature worth mentioning here, although it's more of a feature as opposed to an upgrade to the display itself. Now, on this generation, there are only two variants, right? So the space gray and also the silver. Meanwhile, all of the additional physical features remain the same, right? So you have a headphone jack there. That's always good. You have a headphone jack, and I'm pretty sure that's because of the two speakers that we have at the bottom, because when you're holding it this way, the sound only comes out of one way. So if you have headphones, you can just stick that in and you'll be able to, whether you hold it this way or this way, at least you get the sound in both of your ears. Same power button, same location there, same volume rocker. We do have Touch ID, one of my favorite features on Apple devices. So despite having many new tablets, many new iPads moving up to the USB Type-C, it looks like we are still stuck with that Lightning port on the regular iPad. I don't know why Apple just will not give this up. As of now, this is the only tablet being made by Apple still carrying that proprietary Lightning port, but I'm certainly hoping that will change soon. And as you continue to see here, the front there looks very familiar. You have that very thick bezel. In short, it feels the same, it looks the same. So you want to make sure that you don't run out there trying to buy this based off of physical upgrades. There aren't any. On the other hand, there are upgrades on the inside, right? So this guy here is now powered by the A13 Bionic chip, and that is the chipset that you would find on the iPhone 11, I believe, iPhone 11, iPhone 11 Pro, 11 Pro Max. So previous generation flagship, but still very relevant to today. And I'm talking, of course, when it comes down to performance. According to Apple, this guy is about 25% faster than the previous generation. And if you remember the iPad 8, the one that I covered last year, the previous gen, that was actually a pretty good, it had really good performance. So it looks like this one will take it further, but you won't notice that much if you're just doing like day-to-day tasks. You will, however, notice that performance bump when working with heavier tasks. Like 4K video editing, for example, is one of the best ways to be able to determine, the difference in terms of performance when it comes down to like simple comparison of this with the previous generation. Now, this is not a comparison video, but just to say that I've tested, I've edited 4K videos. The same 4K video that I tested on my iPad 8 on Adobe Premiere and Power Director seemed to flow a little bit better on here when playing around with the editing tools. So things like cutting or slicing and dicing clips and moving them around, or using those same clips to create heavier compound clips, seem to flow pretty well. It was really good. So normalizing level, fusion clips, they all seem to flow in a very clean way on here. All of this meaning that you can do some pretty respectable level of editing on this device, at least based off of my preliminary testing of, editing, by editing that 4K video. So that's always a good thing to know when it comes down to performance with these tablets. And it's also important to always account for internal storage when playing around with these 4K clips, right? And of course, speaking of storage, this is a good time to bring up the fact that there has been an upgrade with the, when it comes down to base internal storage. Last year, the base storage was 32 gigs. This year, you have that double. So now you're getting 64 gigs of internal storage, base internal storage. And if you go up to the next tier, that would be 256 gigs as opposed to the 128 gigs that you would normally get with the iPad Air. 4K. By the way, if you do like the content so far, please do me a favor, hit both the like and the subscribe button there. I truly appreciate that. Plus, that's a tremendous help to this channel. But anyway, so granted, depending on what you do with your tablet and your workflow, many of you out there will be just fine with the 64 gigs, right? On the other hand, if you are planning on using this as your editing machine, let's say you're looking for an affordable tablet that you're going to be using to edit videos, possibly 4K videos, that will change. It would radically change your workflow, right? Especially if you decide to go with higher resolution videos, right? If you're dealing with multiple videos, that would mean that your workflow would involve some type of, transfer of videos as soon as you're done editing them, from this, unless of course you move up to get the 256 gigs model. But of course, that will cost you a little bit more. Now, with all this being said, obviously this tablet handles other things pretty well also, right? So despite that iPadOS background apps time limit, you will be able to do some good level of multitasking without, a considerable, delay or considerable lag, right? Now, if you are playing around, or if you are using a really heavy app, right? Something like Procreate, for example, that's one that's very popular among people who are using Apple devices. If you're using Procreate, you may encounter some limitations because that's a very, very heavy app and it adjusts to the device based off of the specs that you have there. So based off of the fact that you only have 3 gigs of RAM here, Procreate is one of those really heavy apps that would make adjustments just to avoid having the tablet start lagging or, having the app actual crash. And this is just my way of saying that, despite being pretty powerful for a budget tablet, it's still not a productivity tablet, right? So you have a lot of productivity applications that are made to adjust based off of the specs of the device that they're being used on. Now, I have tested games on here also, including fairly heavy games like Call of Duty, Asphalt 9, PUBG Mobile, and more, and the performance has been great also. So besides all of that, the UI remains pretty straightforward as, we have been accustomed to seeing. An iPad OS 15 is actually pretty clean. It's pretty neat, along with all of the new features that have been added. Now, I want to go ahead and jump onto the next upgrade here, which is going to be the camera. Not the main camera, but the front camera specifically. That's a very, very big upgrade on this tablet. But before I get there, let's go ahead and talk about the camera located on the back. So you still get that 8 megapixel main camera there. So just don't expect it to be a top-notch camera. It's that same mediocre camera that we've seen in past generations, right? So you don't really use it to go out there and take high definition pictures. It's good for scanning documents and doing things like that. But other than that, if you're in a situation where you need to take a picture, just use your phone. Now, going to the front camera here, even though the location of the camera itself hasn't been updated, it's still at the top here as opposed to what new generation of tablets are doing. The new one that you have here is a 12 megapixel ultra wide, integrated with that new, center stage feature that Apple has been promoting so much lately, where the camera adjusts the shot to make sure that it keeps up with the subject if the subject is, let's say, moving, or it would automatically pull back and pan a little to go ultra wide and kind of include as many people as possible into the frame. And in my humble opinion, I think Apple did a great job integrating that, especially given, this day and age where the best way to connect and stay connected with, co-workers, friends, and loved ones is, the best way to do that is now via video calls, right? So what other way to make the experience, to better the experience, than to just better that front-facing camera? Because that's what most people use today. You don't have a lot of people, going around, taking pictures with their tablets. Some people still do, but people use the front-facing camera now more than ever. So it's good to see that Apple recognizes that and made sure that people who can't afford to go for the iPad Pro or something like that could still get access to that. I'll call it a flagship feature. They can still get access to that flagship feature going for this tablet right here. Plus, it's a high resolution camera, so picture quality is actually better on here. Now, in terms of battery, I've only had this tablet for 5 days, so not enough time to gather enough data to tell you what the battery is going to be like. But I can tell you that I'm getting full days without any issues. Apple actually is, advertising 10 hours of, video playback before it dies, and it's going to depend depend on your type of usage. I can't tell you how long it's going to last when you use it, but I can tell you that I'm able to finish the day with it. Now, just like the previous generation, this one does support the Apple Pencil. First generation, that same first generation pencil that has this very creative way of charging. It still offers an overall good experience for drawing and taking notes. It does provide access to some of the newer features implemented by Apple for the Apple Pencil. You know, things like handwriting recognition features, you know, signing documents, and a few more features. And that same tapping sound of the pencil touching that glass screen still drives me nuts. People get used to it. I just can't go past that. It still drives me, as I mentioned, just crazy. So the screen, and I believe I said it at the beginning of the video, is still non-laminated. So when you are writing on the screen, you can kind of see that little gap between the top part of the screen and I mean, you get used to it. And another thing to add here is that it's running 60 Hertz, so there will be an obvious lag when you're taking down notes or when you're drawing. It won't be anything heavy in a way that kind of messes up your experience, but that latency is very real, and it's higher than what you would find on an iPad Pro, for example, with ProMotion, along with that Apple Pencil 2nd Gen. Now, with all of this being said, here's my take. This is still the best bang for your buck when it comes down to purchasing an iPad specifically. Actually, it's even better this year around, you know, because of the upgrades that have been added to this guy here. So best bang for your bucks if you're out there looking for an iPad to buy, which is also the explanation why it sells so much. This guy here, last year it sold so well, the year before that, and this year I anticipate it will sell just as well. And if you think about it from a more pragmatic or a more, you know, practical perspective, this should be the one that most people go for, especially this year with that bump in performance, right? It's an old a previous gen flagship that can keep up with a lot of, you know, even Android mid-range and certain pro level tablets, you know, in terms of, you know, just raw performance. You have double the size now, 64 gigs as opposed to 32, and you have a substantial upgrade with that front-facing camera to kind of match today's dynamics when it comes down to like communicating with our loved ones and, you know, co-workers or friends. And sure, there are some compromises that have been made here because it's a budget iPad after all, but my hope is that Apple upgrades just this whole look, right? So it's a legendary look. You know, when it first came out, we all loved it, but I think at this point it's something from the past, right? So it's time for them to go ahead and move on to something a little bit more modern. You know, with all of that being said, it's still a very well-built tablet, right? Solid, and I would recommend it based off of everything that I've mentioned, just the specs, and, you know, despite having a modern look, I would still recommend this guy here. Anyway, I certainly hope that this was informative. Please let me know with your questions. I'm going to be making even more videos as I continue to test. I'm planning on shooting, no, maybe not shooting. I'm planning on shooting a video with a different device or with this camera, and then do a full edit of the video with this and upload that, and you guys are going to tell me what you think of it. I don't know when I'm going to make that happen, but my plan is to do that sometime in the future. Now, don't forget to hit that like button. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so already. I'm going to catch you in the comment section, so make sure to comment. I'm also going to catch you in the next video, of course, and as always, up until that next video, stay safe out there.